Hey, Joel. So you're going to learn about how to find A efficiently with quadratic equations. Now, if you remember correctly, we know that our standard form of a quadratic equation is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, you should have learned about how to find b and c in that activity that you should have done yesterday. If you haven't done it and you don't know how to do that, you need to go back and do that first, please, before you move on. And so we are now going to officially think about how to create equations using vertex form. And so if you remember, a, b, and c are numbers, and a will never equal 0. And the vertex form of a quadratic equation is going to look like this. Okay, so y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. All right, and so we are now, if you kind of remember, this is very similar to slope-intercept form when we're looking at linear equations. And so h and k are the coordinates of the vertex. And if you remember what the vertex is that minimum or maximum in our parabola when we're looking at those quadratic equations. And a will never equal 0. Regardless of what form of quadratic equations you're looking at, a can never equal 0. And so let's kind of keep going on this. The vertex form of y equals a times x minus h squared plus k allows us to find vertex of the parabola without graphing or creating an xy table. It's actually very, very fast, and it makes our lives 10 times easier, so we don't have to create those tables and find our coordinates and things like that. And so let's say we're looking at an equation like this, y equals x minus 2 squared plus 5. The cool thing about this is that we can actually pull out those pieces and find. So if you don't have a number in front of those parentheses right here where your a should be, it's automatically 1. And then the biggest thing I want you to notice in this is that look at your x coordinate, which is 2, and your y coordinate, which is 5 in this vertex piece here. Your 5, your y sign stayed the same, right? It's still a positive 5 and it's a positive 5 in your coordinates. Now notice how in your parentheses, this negative 2 became a positive 2. And that's the biggest piece I kind of want you to really focus on. And don't forget when you're working on these, okay? Our sign, it's a little confusing. It's just like that slope-intercept form. It's an x minus some number, right? And so because it's an x minus, our x is actually a positive. Now, if our x was a negative, it would be x plus that piece, right? And so I have some examples that will kind of help you understand this. Our a in this scenario is going to be 4. Our x is going to be a positive 6, and our y is going to be a negative 3, okay? And then we also have a scenario like this. Now notice how we have a positive now. And because we have a positive, our x is actually going to be a negative 1. All right, if that does make sense, let me know. I'm sure it does. So let's kind of keep going on this. So let's say we're looking at something like this. Our vertex in this is going to be 4, 1. Our vertex is this is going to be negative 7, 3. Our vertex in this is going to be a positive 5 and negative 12. And we can kind of make sure that we did that correctly by looking at this. If you are still a little lost on identifying your vertex and how your x changes signs, please let me know. And so let's say we're trying to find a value, the letter a in our equation. Recall that the vertex form of the quadratic equation is this, okay? And so let's say we are looking at an equation that is something like this. And let's say in our parabola, we have the point 2, 9, okay? Now in parabolas, you're going to see points regardless. And so just pick a point, whatever point you want to work with. I recommend lower numbers. And so if you look at our example here, we have an x and we have a y. Now also in our vertex form, we also still have an x and a y. And so if we just pick a point on our parabola, we can replace our x and our y with the corresponding pieces that we know they are. Sorry, my arrows are a little off. And then we can solve, okay? And we can kind of just solve and solve and solve. And because it's 9 equals 9, and that is a true statement, a is going to just be a 1, all right? We can also just put an a here in front of this parentheses here and keep it. And then we also know that if we subtract 5, 9 minus 5 is going to be 4, and then we divide by 4, and a will equal 1, and that is still a true statement. Watch the next video so you can see some examples.